Had an angel come to earth and said, "There are many millions of dollars to be had for the digging, but there are penalties attached," would men have accepted the gift? "Go, take the treasure," he would have said, "but listen to the terms. You will go where desolation has from time immemorial held its seat. Your eyes will look out in the morning upon the desert, and only the desert. Your children will grow up where they will never hear a bird sing, never see a green field, nor know the blessing which comes at noon with the shade of a great tree. Once a week, you will bring from the depths the broken body of what an hour before was a strong man. Your natures will grow metallic in thought. Your dreams will be money only. You will see so few blessed and so many suffer that your heart will grow callous. And thousands of you will doubt all good in man, all mercy in God. Bodie Standard News, May 1878.
Bodie, 8,400 feet above sea level. In summer, 70 degrees. In winter, 20 below zero. It wasn't scenery that brought men to this place, a place to become known more for violence than treasure. Little remains as witness to that age. Once called City of the Sky, it was, during its heyday, the greatest mining excitement in the West. A microcosm of the hopes and fears of America itself. The last of the old-time mining camps. To white men in 1849, the 12,000-foot peaks of the eastern Sierra Nevada constituted mere obstacles on his trail to the gold fields of Northern California. But in 1859, California 49ers began hearing reports of gold placer diggings along the eastern slopes. Nothing less than gold fever could make a man leave his family in New York and travel halfway around the world, all to end up in a place like this. But that's what 49er William Bodie did. In 1859, after 11 years of rainbow chasing, otherwise known as prospecting, Bodie and 4 other men halted their burros in a shallow valley to dig yet another prospect hole. Bodie couldn't believe his eyes. He was heard to remark that if this was finally pay dirt, they had come a hell of a ways to find it. William Bodie would never get rich. Less than 3 months later, he lay dead, the victim of a treacherous Sierra Nevada blizzard. Bill Bodie's discovery just couldn't be kept a secret. Word spread, and soon a Bodie mining district was formed, along with 20 claims. The claims were slowly worked in the 1860s because there just wasn't enough gold to compare with richer strikes at places like Virginia City and Aurora. Mining men considered Bodie a dud. In 1874, just as miners were about to abandon the Bunker Hill mine, there was an accidental cave-in. It revealed a fabulously rich vein of gold ore. The first load of rock pulled onto the scales June the 10th, 1878, with over 10,000 pounds of rock that showed gold in every piece. So much, in fact, that the syndicate mill had to be shut down periodically to clean its stamps, which had become fouled by too much pure gold. A mill run of 1,000 tons of ore averaged $600 a ton and shocked the mining world. Bodie was on the map now, and San Franciscans couldn't wait to sink cash into Bodie's mine shafts.
I made the grand rounds of Bodie Bluff and saw enough to satisfy me that William Lent and other stockholders will be our next bonanza kings. The Standard is extracting ore above the 450-foot level and has a shaft down 800 feet in good ore. There is millions in it. The ledge holds out all the way down and is growing wider. The mill is now working what they call over here poor ore. That is $40 rock. It would make a Grass Valley man's eyes pop out of his head to hear $40 rock referred to as poor ore. They are now cross-cutting to find the continuation of the Standard ledge. It is the big gamble of the camp. Standard News, November 1877.
Bodie Bluff began to take on a pockmarked complexion as new mines sprang up along the ridge. From Bodie Bluff through Silver Hill to Queen Bee, they tunneled out the mountains and called the holes they made Champion, Red Cloud, Noonday, and Jupiter.
The splendid new 30-stamp mill of the Noonday Company was started up for the first time Christmas afternoon in the presence of a large number of people and amid the snapping of champagne corks. A lady visitor sounded the whistle for the start, and the ponderous machinery moved off like the works of the most delicate watch.
The mines needed miners, so companies were willing to pay high wages. $4 a day for 12 hours of work, 6 days a week. Wages were high, but hopes were even higher.
The Standard is leaving many of its richest ore breasts and stopes untouched. Captain Thompson described one immense vein in which from wall to wall the gold glittered everywhere, as though it had been fired into the mass from a blunderbuss. He visited the Noondays today and will leave this afternoon for San Francisco, fully convinced that Bodie is the biggest mining district ever discovered.
By 1878, people were pouring in. From other mining camps they came: Virginia City, Gold Hill, Aurora, and from cities like Sacramento and San Francisco. Many were the product of a rough-and-tumble West: ex-ranchers, Indian fighters, and assorted border ruffians. Many had labored on the Transcontinental Railroad or had fought as soldiers of the blue and gray. There were the veteran 49ers. Some came to stake their own claims, others to work for wages, and some to work as little as possible. And there were immigrants: Irishmen, Swedes, Italians, Frenchmen, Chinese, and Mexicans, all to whom this journey to a new land of freedom and hope was like a golden promise of a better life. Here was their chance to be in on the opening of another treasure house of the West.
Main Street presented an appearance last night that could scarcely be equaled in any city of Bodie's size. It was quite a matter of difficulty to make your way through the throng. The saloons, eating houses, general stores, and various places of amusement were fairly packed with people. And considering the number of men working underground, it is hard to understand what such a vast concourse of people do. Of course, we ignore altogether the usual number of bums and vampires that follow in the wake of the energetic, laboring masses.
A man walked into a saloon the other day and nodded his head at the crowd. 20 men stepped forward to answer the call. When he asked, "Boys, how many of you want to work?" 17 of them walked off saying, "I thought he wanted us to drink." And the other 3 wanted to know what kind of work it was.
Each day our streets are absolutely blocked up with teams which come from all directions, loaded with every variety of freight. The scene on Main Street is exceedingly lively and makes all feel more and more confident of the future of Bodie. Bodie Standard News, October 1878.
Despite nonstop construction, by the time winter snows began to fall in 1878, there were more people in Bodie than there was adequate shelter. Nightly temperatures plummeting to minus 20 degrees sent the poorly housed and underfed indoors, wherever they could find it. Men slept under billiard tables, in saloon chairs, or walked the streets trying to stay warm until morning. Pneumonia claimed scores of lives.
It is storming fearfully, and people are flocking here that have neither friends nor money. No room for anything or anybody. I cannot for the life of me see what is bringing people here. There are 10 for every job. This is a hard place. The thermometer is sitting on the table 4 feet from a red-hot stove and registers 62 degrees. The wind is howling, the snow falling and drifting, making altogether a very dismal picture. Signed E.S. Williams, 1878.
December 1878. Bodie has a population of 5,000, including the suburb around the Bodie and Standard mines. The main street is nearly a mile long, and lots are staked off in all directions on the hillsides. The growth of the town has no parallel in the history of mining. Society has not assimilated, but the elements exist in a state of chaos. There are 47 saloons and 10 faro tables.
The spring of 1879 saw renewed vigor. It was said the hammer and buzzsaw could be heard every day from sunrise to sunset.
Main Street in our prosperous city is a boulevard of the sky. No city in the world has a street so high and so wide. 250 feet by 8,300 feet high is some avenue.
Wagon after wagon groaned with heavy loads of machinery, lumber, food, and dry goods freighted up Bodie Canyon.
The stages come in loaded with passengers and go out loaded with bullion.
I went there as a boy of 14 in June 1879 when the camp was in its glory. Men came to Bodie from all over Nevada, from California, and from other places in the West, all of the adventurous type. The majority were of the best mining camp type, but there was also a gathering of the wildest, most desperate characters that ever infested a mining camp. The streets were alive with men at all times of the day and night. Signed, Grant Smith.
Free enterprise was alive and kicking. Many an entrepreneur was only too happy to provide a miner the necessities of life.
We take pleasure in informing the people of Bodie and vicinity that we have spared no expense in fitting up a first-class saloon where we shall be happy to dispense the very best of wines, liquors, and cigars. The Bank Exchange, next door below Wells Fargo in the post office. McDermott and Cullen, proprietors.
Boone and Wright, dealers in general merchandise. At the corner of Main and Green Streets, groceries, provisions, crockery, glassware, and pure whiskeys.
Silas B. Smith's new dry goods store will open Tuesday, November 25th, 1879, and will be run strictly on the cash system. The largest and most complete stock ever offered in Bodie. Dress goods, ladies' underwear. Give us a call and satisfy yourselves.
The Bodie Bank. We transact a general banking business. We sell exchange on San Francisco, New York, and draw direct on all the principal cities of Europe. We buy and sell mining stocks strictly on commission. William Irwin, President.
The Occidental Hotel. We claim for this house that it is the best furnished and most completely arranged of any in the state of California. It is our intention to supply a want long felt in Bodie and provide our patrons with the very neatest and most comfortable sleeping apartments possible to be fitted up. The rooms are large, airy, and provided with stoves and every convenience known to a comfortable home. Charges in accordance with the times. Kemp and Coleman, proprietors.
D. Tubino, formerly of San Francisco, respectfully informs his friends and the public that he is prepared to furnish to order all the delicacies the market affords. The best French cooks are employed, and anything wanted is prepared to suit the taste. Give me a call and try the Oyster Bay Chop Stand. D. Tubino, proprietor, July 1879.
Virginia Assay Office and Chemical Laboratory, Main Street, Bodie. Bullion and ores carefully assayed and guaranteed to coincide with the U.S. Mint. A. Sutherling, proprietor.
Having leased a large stable, we are now prepared to furnish the public with the best turnouts in Bodie. From a fine buggy team to a magnificent four-in-hand. Board for horses and a sufficiency of good feed guaranteed. Old Tuolumne Stables, North Main Street, Bodie. Nick Ball, proprietor.
Probably no district in the history of mining possesses such a singularly interesting and perfect formation, one which is certain to induce capital, industry, and intelligence to go to extreme lengths in the cause of development. Signed, Professor Ben Silliman.
The Bodie Formation extended some 10,400 feet along the top of the ridge and was nearly 3/4 of a mile wide. To get to it would require hard work. Bodie deposits were left to men with a liking for brutal work and a harsh existence.
We are continually annoyed by young men writing from Atlantic states requesting we use our influence in securing them a clerkship. Something nice, clean, and easy. Let this answer suffice for all. If you can whack a 16-bull team, hit a drill, engineer a wheelbarrow, or deal faro, and shoot with some degree of accuracy, then we advise you to come right along. Otherwise, stay where you are as an ornament in a New York dry goods store. Bodie Standard News, September 1879.
One theory, called the Veta Madre, held that all the gold veins would descend into one deep, gigantic central mother vein of incalculable worth. Plainly on the mind of every miner as he started his 12-hour shift was that tantalizing prospect. And so the mines went deeper.
This thing of being dropped down into the bowels of the earth in wooden buckets may be very amusing to read about, but I've enjoyed pleasanter modes of locomotion. There was one shaft which left an indelible impression upon my mind. It was about 4 feet square, rough, black, and dismal, with a small flickering light, apparently 1,000 feet below, making the darkness visible. Down I crept, rung after rung, ladder after ladder, in the black darkness, with the solid walls of rock pressing the air close around me. With a desperate effort I proceeded, clinging to the frail woodwork as a drowning man clings to a straw, gasping for breath. There was an oppressive sensation in being so completely isolated, barred out, as it were, from the surface of the earth. Yet how many there are who spend half their lives in such places for a pittance of the wages which they squander in dissipation? Surely it is worth $4 a day to work in these dismal holes. Signed, J. Ross Brown.
Mining law said that any tunnel which struck a blind ledge of gold could be claimed by that company. Many a tunnel was watched with bated breath as the miners advanced. Each outfit pressed forward with everything they had. Miners felt duty-bound to push things to the limit. In the search for things precious, men were willing to take chances. Buried hundreds of feet deep under the mountains, a miner never knew at what bend he might come face to face with death. Even if he escaped a crippling accident, he still faced the possibility of contracting pneumonia or silicosis from breathing in the rock dust. The mine owners cared little about developing safety measures. Their object was to extract the ore as quickly and cheaply as possible. And even at $4 a day, labor was cheap. With inadequate brakes and incompetent operators, many a miner lost his life in buckets or cages, free-falling 200, 400, and even 700 feet to the bottom of mine shafts. As the mines grew more complex, miners faced the added challenge of dodging a maze of open holes. More than a few slipped on ice and fell into them, or simply forgot and stepped back into empty space. And that was the last anybody saw of them alive. Water was a constant threat. Giant pumps worked night and day to pump it out. And where flooding wasn't a problem, bad air could be. But the most feared hazard wasn't water, bad air, or cave-ins. The miners' greatest fear was fire, and worse. It happened the evening of July 8, 1879. 2 tons of giant powder exploded at the old Standard Works on the hill. 7 men were dead, several of which, it was reported, were vaporized. The shock wave was felt 20 miles away in Bridgeport. Though miners suffered through the death and mutilation, they had one ally, the Bodie Miners Union. In June of 1878, a miners' union hall was constructed. The miners' union eventually negotiated better working conditions for the miners, but never higher wages. A miner never forgot that while he earned his $4, rich men in New York and San Francisco were growing richer. So the miner lived for the moment, in places like the saloon, dance hall, or opium den.
How shall I describe it? It's so unlike anything east that I can compare it with nothing you have ever seen. 100 men to 1 woman and child. Saloons, liquor everywhere. And here the men are. Where else can they be? At home in their cheerless, lonesome hovels or huts? No, in the saloons, where the lights are bright, amid the hum of many voices and the excitement of gambling, where men are congregated and living uncomfortably, where there are no home ties or social checks. Here one sees gambling and vice in all its horrible realities. Signed, William Brewer.
The Bodie Standard claimed, Main Street has more saloons in a given length than any thoroughfare in the world. And indeed it did in 1879, with more than 50 saloons for the miners to drink, fight, and gamble in. Bodie Whiskey, also known as Blue Blazer, Tarantula Juice, and Bodie Lightning Whiskey, became renowned throughout the West. Hard drinkers claimed it was made from old boots and scraps of iron, and that a couple of snorts could craze a man with ordinary brain power. This was obviously true in the case of one John Peters, who, after a rollicking night on the town, headed back to the Standard Lodging House. Staggering off course, he ended up at the Black Hawk Mine, whereupon he fell 110 feet down a shaft. Worried friends found him down there 2 days later, alive and stone sober.
The latter half of Saturday night was a wild one. The consumption of bug juice was something wonderful. Fighters were as thick as blackbirds in a rice field. No one had his measure taken for a wooden overcoat, however, though the prospect at times looked as if it would develop into a bonanza for the undertakers. Such pleasantries as firing off pistols were frequently indulged in during the night, and the Sabbath dawned while the boys were having a high old time generally. Bodie Morning News, October 1879.
There was the Empire, the Oasis, the Parole, and the Senate. And then there was John Wagner's saloon at the corner of Main and King Streets.
Grant Smith. Men were judged by their character and ability, not by the ordinary rules of society. The mining camps had their own 10 commandments, which included but few of those given to Moses. There would be hundreds of men every night in John Wagner's saloon. The rear of the room was filled with gambling tables of every kind, principally faro banks, presided over by silent, watchful dealers, with hundreds, even thousands of dollars in gold and silver stacked up in front of them, and a gun always within reach. Nearly everybody drank, nearly everybody gambled. Boisterous conviviality was the prevailing spirit. Whiskey was the common drink. Beer and wine were too insipid for those tough stomachs, and much whiskey led to quarreling and gunfighting. Weapons were oftener drawn than used. When a shot was fired, the crowd would make a mad rush for the front doors. Many times, John Wagner's front doors were carried bodily out into the street by these stampeding crowds, eager to escape flying bullets. Fortunately, the fighting was confined to the rough element, and so long as they killed off one another, the better citizens did not care. Every once in a while, an innocent spectator would get in the way of a bullet, but that was considered partly his own fault for being there.
The boys have a reprehensible practice of shooting at targets across Main Street, a diversion not eminently calculated to soothe the nerves of one having occasion to cross the line of fire. The terror thus inspired, however, is supposed to considerably enhance the fascination of the sport. Signed, James Braley.
Bodie whiskey mixed with Bodie's bad men in Bodie's saloons created a kind of alcoholic delirium that was conducive to protracted shootouts, Bodie style. Known as Bad Shot Gulch and as a shooter's town, Bodie's bad men seemed to use up a lot of lead in order to hit anything. In the case of Misters Nixon and McDonald, 8 shots were exchanged while they were 3 feet apart. Only 1 bullet hit anybody. Called shooting sensations by the Bodie press, they occurred with enough regularity to give rise to the oft-raised question upon rising, have we a man for breakfast?
The shooting was kept up for all of an hour, and then Kurgan's boarding house began to overflow with arrivals. Both cells were literally packed. As each one was brought in, his person was searched for concealed weapons. There were no less than 18 knives of all sizes and 15 guns that could completely demoralize any Eastern man. Daily Bodie Standard, August 1879.
They have some very poor marksmen in Bodie, and some resident undertakers ought to start a shooting gallery here. About 2 o'clock last Monday morning, 2 men emptied the contents of 2 6-shooters at each other across the counter in a bar room, with no other effect than tapping a barrel of ale. One of the men then retired to the street, where he obtained a fresh supply of ammunition, and the firing was kept up until nearly daylight, putting 3 balls through the glass doors and shooting of a cigar in the mouth of a passing stranger, making the cigar too short to smoke. This indignity then caused the smoker to lose his temper, and he woke up the constable, whereupon the firing ceased.
Some of the newspapers are commenting upon the number of shooting scrapes that occur in Bodie. Well, to be sure, here is something of a shooting gallery, and there is a man shot before breakfast not infrequently. But what are we to do? Times are dull, money scarce, and the weather miserable. Under such a condition of affairs, there must be some inexpensive recreation provided for the people. 6-shooters are of no account unless they can be used, and coffins will warp and be unfit for occupancy if allowed to stand a great while in an undertaking establishment. June 1881.
The bad man from Bodie was Washoe Pete. And it was Red Roe, Rattlesnake Dick, or Bill Deegan. Many a town rough personified the bad man, and many paid the full price for a slow draw. Part myth, part reality, the bad man from Bodie was dangerous only to those who fooled with the rough crowd. The least discriminating killer in Bodie didn't even use a 6-shooter.
There's no place in the world that the mercury can drop so easy and without fuss as in Bodie. It fell to about 20 degrees below zero Friday night and came up smiling the next day as though nothing had happened. October 1880.
The weather is so cold in Bodie that 4 pairs of blankets and 3 to a bed is not sufficient to promote warmth.
A more uninviting region would be difficult to imagine. Publishing a newspaper, let alone mining hard rock, could be arduous.
The printing office is open on all sides, and the snow flies in wherever it pleases. In the morning, everything is frozen solid. Then we throw things out, and the whole concern is deluged with drippings. It's hard to set type under such conditions. When the office is dry, it is too cold to work. When it is warm, the printer needs gum boots and oil skins. In fact, it has been a hell of a job to get this paper out. The Index 1880.
The fall of snow was tremendous, and a terrific gale from the south added to the discomfiture. The town on Wednesday resembled a Siberian stage station. Not two men could be seen on the streets at any one time. Several times during the day, it was reported that miners had lost their way and sank down exhausted in trying to climb the hill through 3 feet of snow on the level in the face of a raging blizzard.
In spring, the snowmelt caused another set of problems. People and animals often got stuck in the bog that was, during better times, Main Street. It took 14 mules to pull one freight wagon out of the mud. And it was especially treacherous for drunken town derelicts, who sometimes had to be extracted from the muck using a wagon crane. It was so bad one could safely walk across on the ears of mules trapped in mud, according to one old-timer.
The Bodie Silver Cornet Band will give a grand ball in the Miners Union Hall on September 6th for the purpose of buying instruments.
It was a 24-hour-a-day town now. Stamp mills thumped away day and night. The town was never quiet.
Never before in the history of Bodie has there been such a continual round of gaiety among our better class of citizens as at present. There are public balls given by the numerous social and fraternal organizations to such an extent that one has considerable difficulty keeping up with the giddy whirl. January 1880.
The Firemen's Ball at Miners Union Hall last night was largely attended by the best people of Bodie. The attendance of ladies was especially large, and many of the toilets would have made a city belle feel a twinge of envy. They were so elegant and tasteful. The arrangements were perfect in their character and reflect great credit on the gentleman having them in charge. The music was the best that could be provided, and the utmost harmony and decorum was displayed throughout. All in all, the Firemen's Ball was one of the pleasantest social events in the history of Bodie. December 1879.
One of the most fashionable audiences that's ever been seen in the Bodie Opera House attended last evening. Bobby McGinley needs no comment. Anyone who has heard Bobby with his violin knows that he has no equal. Mrs. Brierly and the singing of Annie Laurie and Come and Throw the Rye was greeted with deafening applause. Bodie Daily Standard, July 1879.
In Bodie, the most celebrated day of the year was the 4th of July.
Early Wednesday evening, the high wind subsided, and Thursday morning the sun rose from behind the hills, beautiful and bright, and the people of Bodie were aroused from their peaceful slumbers by the firing of 13 guns. At an early hour, the small boys, age unlimited, with crackers and bombs, shotguns and pistols, and all the other noise-making contraptions, began their assaults on the eardrums of the populace, frightening horses, timid ladies, and prowling dogs.
The beautiful old flags were unfurled once more in honor of the grandest nation the sun has ever shone on. At 10:30 a.m., the procession formed near the Miners' Union Hall and marched down Main Street. The spectacle was indeed a beautiful one, with flags flying, the band playing, and horses prancing.
Next came the car of state, a bank. All around the car was occupied by 38 little girls representing different states, like a bouquet of so many little jasmines.
Thousands of people lined the streets, and greater enthusiasm has never before prevailed, singing and cheering from the balconies, and re-echoing from the column being continuous from the commencement to the ending of the march. Daily Bodie Standard, 1880.
If every street in Bodie has a story to tell, Bonanza Street would make a novel. Also known as Virtue Street and Virgin Avenue, it paralleled Main Street in the north part of town. Here, women of easy conscience whose days of innocence have fled entertained their customers in small cabins, conveniently located just behind the saloons and assorted gin joints lining Main Street. Dance halls, also known as hurdy-gurdies, were the rage. Here a man could buy a ticket to dance and drinks for himself and a girl. And if he had any money left after gambling, drinking, and dancing, a prostitute was most certain to relieve him of it.
And her beauty was so for an old man's gold. She's a bird in a gilded
Kate Wise, Nellie Monroe, and French Joe. Big Bonanza number 1, Rosa May and Madame Moustache. It was a hard way to make a living, an occupation from which opium addiction and suicide were all too frequent options for relief. Many women died an early death and were buried outside the cemetery. Their graves are forever lost. A Chinatown, rivaling San Francisco's, set on the northeast edge of town along King Street. The Chinese sold vegetables, fish, chicken, and pork. They offered laundry services and sold firewood. Team after team of stoutly burros were pressed into service to satisfy Bodie's hunger for wood. But it wasn't enough. So in 1881, they built a railroad whose only purpose was to move wood to the town. With switchbacks steep enough to discourage any other railroad, the Bodie and Benton went ahead and laid track that climbed 2,000 feet in just 10 miles. Nearing the top along Bodie Bluff Ridge, it was so steep the engine had to shuttle back and forth, pulling 3 cars at a time. It never carried any passengers, but it hauled all the wood Mono Mills could produce. 100,000 cords a year.
Bodie is probably the only city of 8,000 inhabitants in the world which has no church. October 1879.
In 1882, Bodie finally got its church. 2 of them, Catholic and Methodist. Many an anxious family wrote to Reverend Warrington regarding their sons.
I do not wonder that you tremble when you think of his surroundings, a sea of sin lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. Such dissipation as is indulged in here you have never read of in books. Let me give you a table of contents for last week's chapter in Bodie. On Monday morning, a man was lynched for shooting another in cold blood. On Friday, 2 men grappled with each other and, holding fast with left hands, poured shot into each other until one dropped dead, and the other has been expected to breathe his last each hour since. Fill that out with what you must know accompanies it, and you have 1 week in Bodie.
Bad shots or not, enough lead had been pumped by 1880 that many men had been killed. Law-abiding citizens wanted to know how the constable and deputies could let these things happen. The Daily Bodie Standard offered a prize to the first person, criminal or otherwise, who could catch an officer out at night patrolling Bodie streets. And of all the murders committed, no one had ever been convicted, partly because witnesses were too drunk to remember, and partly because a jury of 12 good men could somehow never be assembled. Talk of a vigilante committee known as the 601 surfaced. And on the morning of January the 14th, 1881, it all came to a head. One Joseph DeRoche, angry at the husband of a woman he had been romantically involved with, shot and murdered him in cold blood at the corner of Main and Low Streets.
Bodie Free Press. Between 1:30 and 2 o'clock Monday morning, a long line of masked men were seen to file out of a side street into Bonanza Avenue. There must have been 200 of them. Amid loud cries of DeRoche, bring him out and hurry up, Jailer Kurgan appeared and said, "All right, boys, give me a little time." DeRoche's head was bare, and as the bright rays of the moon glanced upon his face, there was a picture of horror visible. He was hurried up a back street to Fuller. The corner of Green was turned, and a halt was made. In front of this place was a huge gallows frame. "Move it over to the spot where the murder was committed," was the order. And a dozen men carried it to the corner of Main and Low Streets. DeRoche was asked by the leader if he had anything to say. He replied, "No, nothing." "Pull him," was the order. And in a twinkling, the body rose 3 feet from the ground. While the body was still hanging, a paper was pinned onto his breast bearing the following inscription: "All others take warning. Let no one cut him down. Bodie 601.
A cardinal rule of mine operation states that exploration should always precede extraction. Excitement ran so high in 1879 that mining corporations had thrown caution to the wind. Stock capitalization was raised and the massive machinery of mining was hauled in at great expense. Only a few companies ever earned any money for their shareholders. By 1882, miners in the Lint shaft had reached 1,200 feet into the earth. The rich Fortuna ledge of gold had played out, and it was evident the Veta Madre didn't exist. The smaller mines outside Bodie Bluff and Standard Hill had been pure speculation right from the beginning. What had become inflated gems of corporate red ink began closing. The Red Cloud, the Noonday, the Oro. Stocks, once at $53 a share, plummeted to near worthless. Almost overnight, the collapse destroyed the magic of Bodie's name. Miners were laid off and Bodie slid into a deep depression from which it would never recover. Business people of Bodie got the message, and many of them packed up and left for greener pastures. Now the stages that had been overloaded with newcomers were overloaded with the departing. And no one left faster than the bad men and easy women. By 1883, Bodie's north end was already a ghost town. In time, only two mines stayed in business, the Bodie and the Standard. In the summer of 1892, Bodie's worst nightmare became reality. A kitchen fire spread quickly, engulfing 60 tinder dry old buildings. By the turn of the century, only 500 people could call Bodie home. In 1917, the Bodie Railroad was sold for scrap and dismantled. Bodie edged closer to death as a mining town. The final nail was driven into Bodie's coffin in 1932 when toddler and part-time arsonist Bodie Bill got caught playing with matches behind the old sawdust saloon. The resulting conflagration almost destroyed the rest of town. Of the 1,800 buildings that once populated Bodie, a few were saved. The structures that exist today passively resist the onslaught of time and weather, year in and year out. In the numbing quiet of the cemetery, silent tombstones speak epitaphs to the present generation, telling of the harsh realities of mining camp life, of sacrifices made by the common man.
Grant Smith. It has always seemed to me that one learned more about human nature in a mining camp in a few years than could be acquired in a city in a lifetime. Nothing draws people together like hardships and a feeling of dependence. Living conditions in Bodie were crude and primitive to the last degree. But oh, the kindly human feeling, the helpfulness, the good fellowship. People were drawn together as I've never seen them anywhere else. A friend in Bodie was a friend for life. Freedom and independence were in the air. The absence of conventionalities sweetened human intercourse. A spirit of youthful enthusiasm animated everybody, such as people have when embarked on a great adventure.
Like the old dead skin of creatures gone on to better things, Bodie's buildings sit. Architectural remnants of distant dreams now dead. The hopes and fears of Bodie's pioneers may have long since passed away, but these remains testify to the collective efforts of past lives now evolved to present-day America. And though Bodie today may be like old discarded skin America has left behind, people the world over return to visit it in ever-increasing numbers. It is our heritage, part of the reason why we are what we are. For nowhere else in America can a person journey back in time so perfectly to a Wild West mining camp as in the true ghost town of Bodie.